This is my Delta 13-inch planer, model 22-580. I don't believe it's manufactured anymore, but it's one of the tools, my most liked power tools. 2 speeds, 2 feed rates, a dimensioning feed rate, and a finishing feed rate. A crank handle to raise and lower the cutter head, a cutter head lock. After the cutter head is set, there's a lock to prevent rocking and snipe when the board passes all the way through. A window to show the finished thickness after the planer has gone through. There's a little zero cut device right here. When that clicks, that means the board is ready to go through with a zero cut, and we can adjust the feed rate by lowering the cutter head from that point. And the cutter head lowers 1/16 of an inch per revolution of the crank handle. So for softwood, we'd be permitted to cut almost 1/8 of an inch, so we go 1.5 revolutions to cut. These boards, of course, are flattened one side with the jointer. So we'll use, these are some boards that I bandsawed out of Rocky Mountain juniper logs, and I'm going to dimension them with the jointer and the planer. I've taken the fence off the planer just so you can see what I'm doing. There's a window here that shows the finished cut size and a stopper to stop the cutter head when you're cranking it down at the desired dimension. If I want to plane all these boards to 5/8 thickness, I'd do one to that thickness, then set this stopper, and I could stop all subsequent boards at that size. Integral in-feed and outfeed tables that are adjustable for the angle to align them with the floor of the cutter. Planer. First of all, the stand I made for it. Of course, some casters, the height is such that I can roll it underneath this wing of my saw for storage. Like most of my tools, it has retracting casters so that I can set the tool, the planer solidly on its stand on the sides and back. And when I want to move it, just extend the caster that rolls around. 4 swivel casters underneath, the idea being that I could feed boards through from one side, swivel the planer around, feed the boards back through it. The stand has room for a couple of drawers, wide one at the top and a smaller one between the caster mounting block dividers. Made out of cheap materials, 3/4 MDF for the front, 5/8 fiberboard shelving material for the back and sides. Just like the whole cabinet's made out of inexpensive material, 3/4 inch MDF for the sides, back and top. The other attachment I've made is a dust collector. Now, Delta has a dust collector attachment with a 4-inch hose connection, but once it's installed, it's either installed with an outlet to the right or to the left. My dust collector swivels. As the saw is going around, the dust collector will swivel. And of course, it's got the lucite top here, so I can see if the shavings are passing through to the dust collector hose. ground wire, everything on my shop that's connected to the dust collectors is grounded. The next accessory is this Outfeed table. A piece of 14 by 28 millimeter coated shelving, which I've attached to the saw Outfeed table with a piano hinge. The reason for this Outfeed table is to reduce snipe as the board passes all the way through a plater. If the board is supported with even slightly uphill, it holds the end down as the cutter head takes the last cut off the end of the board, and it reduces the snipe or the cut in at the end of the board when plating. This is the basic cabinet for my planer stand, made out of 3/4 MDF, sides, back, and a floor. The sides are rabbeted to accept the back, and I've simply attached the back with some glue and a couple of screws. The floor is fitted into dado grooves in each side, and the floor doesn't extend all the way to the back. There's a slot here for the caster retract extend mechanism. We turn it upside down. I've got a couple of dividers which are glued and screwed into the underside of the floor. I just cut a saw kerf to fit over these 1/8 inch plywood panels that form the front of this box area on the underside of the floor. So I have these dividers that enclose the caster mounting blocks. I've also cut 1/8 inch saw kerfs into the underside of the floor and into the sidewall at the bottom edge here for these 1/8 inch plywood butt panels. Okay, while I have the stand upside down, I've also got a couple of pivot blocks that fit into the outside. One inch by 1 inch caster mounting blocks. One full length. And one that's a little bit shorter because of this, it has to clear the lever for the caster mounting block actuators. So these pivot blocks are will simply be nailed into place. Now, under that, I have the caster mounting blocks, MDF, and a long lever that's attached to this far caster mounting block. The lever extends through a slot in the back of the cabinet. And then on the near caster mounting block, I've got a lever made out of a piece of steel with a slotted hole connecting it to the primary lever. Assemble things in proper order. As the lever is depressed to rotate the far caster mounting board down, the cabinet is jacked off the floor almost a centimeter. The lever is connected to a second lever which rotates the near caster mounting block downwards through a screw and a slotted hole, and likewise jacks this end of the cabinet off the floor. To lock the casters down in the extended position, I made a pedal that incorporates a latch. And on each side of the slot here, where the extend retract lever protrudes, I've got little blocks that act as stops for the pawl on the toe of the pedal. The top of the stand is a double layer of 3/4 MDF. And I've glued them together, just rounded the corners slightly, filled the MDF edge. The top is attached, probably not the simplest way, but with a couple of long flathead screws and a couple of 5/16 bolts with a nut partway down the threaded shaft. I use these to hold the back of the top and also to position the planer on the stand. I don't use hold-on bolts because maintenance of the planer calls for tipping it up on end and oiling bushings and so on. So I want the planer to be easy to move. It weighs, I think it weighs 80 pounds, so it sits solidly. Anyway, I embedded a hardwood disc in the back here and tapped it with thread tap for the 5/16 bolt. And then the nut could be you could use thread locker to hold it, but I actually drilled and put in a cotter pin to keep the nut in position on the threaded shank. And then, lastly, I ground off these threads just a little bit with a disc sander so that they won't file the holes in the planer larger as I remove it and reinstall it. And use a wrench to pull these down and holds the top in place. I've chosen to put 2 drawers in this stand underneath the top, one smaller one at the bottom between the 2 caster mounting boxes, and one larger one big enough to hold replacement knives and a bunch of other accessories for rollers and tables. I made the stands out of 5/8 fiberboard, melamine coated fiberboard for the sides and the back, 3/4 inch fiberboard for the front, and I cut rabbets in the back edge of each side for the back of the drawer. And then I cut a groove in all 4 pieces, a dado groove for the floor. Okay, to assemble a drawer, we need to glue and staple the sides to the back. Slip in the bottom and attach the front. And I've cut dado grooves in the front for the sides as well. So rather than fiddle around with a stop dado, I've just cut them right through and then fitted in a little spacer block to fill in the dado groove. Now, to retain the front, I'm just going to drive in a few nails. Okay, there's the drawer. I'm just using some kitchen drawer. Here's how I made my dust collector connection to the back side of my planer. I've made a 5-sided box and attached it to the chip collector with a piano hinge. This 5-sided box, of course, is open underneath this chip deflector and then closed on the other 4 sides. I've used a lucite top just so I can see what's going on, and a plywood bottom painted white for visibility so I can see if chips are moving into the vacuum system or if there's a blockage somewhere downstream. And then for storage, of course, everything folds up so it doesn't take up much room. This chip deflector is retained with a couple of little thumb screws, so no tools required. Nice thinking on the part of Delta. Then, to attach this elbow, I made a removable slider out of 3/4 inch plywood, hole to match the opening in the top of the box, and a couple of 1/8 inch plywood pieces to act as a stop. And then I've attached the elbow with a flanged ring that I attach with 6 small wood screws. So the elbow can flip, I can spin the planer around and draw the chips out from either side. And then of course when I want to fold everything up, I just slide this assembly out and everything can be folded up for storage. I bought a 90-degree elbow with a flange, but to enable it to swivel, I'm going to change the flange from square into round. So I've bolted a plywood guide to my router table insert, and I'm just going to use that to trim off the ears and make this flange into a round circle. With a piece of 1/4 inch plywood, saw a hole so we have a loose fit for the flange. Second piece of 1/4 inch plywood, saw a hole about the size of the tube so we can use that as a retainer to hold his elbow down as it swivels. I use my oscillating spindle sander to enlarge the holes in these plywood pieces so I can make a flange to retain. Glue the 2 pieces of plywood together. Okay, I'm just going to use the scroll saw to cut this into a circular pattern. And I'm just going to use the opening here for the blade as a guide for the width of this ring. Okay, there we have a retainer ring for the elbow. Okay, some paint and the stop strips completes the slider. Corresponding parts on the chip deflector are these 2 retainers, plywood spacers and 1/8 inch plywood cap strips. So I have something for the elbow assembly to slide under. And when this is slid into place and bottomed, the hole in my chip collector will align with the hole in this elbow assembly. And it fits firmly enough that it's not going to slide out of place while in use. And then the suction hose, ground clamp, and it's ready to use. I made the Outfeed table extension out of a piece of melamine coated fiberboard shelving, 14 by 28 inches, and then ironed on some trim to cover the edges. Extension is attached to the Outfeed table on the planer with a piano hinge, and to make the attachment good and solid, I've grooved in a piece of 5/16 by 5/16 hardwood into the end of the fiberboard shelving, so that the screws in the piano hinge will have something to bite into. Then, to support the outer end, I just made up a simple U-frame with a couple of small casters and a jackknife support to allow it to fold flat and hold it in the extended position. This is just 3/4 by 3/4 hardwood. There's a little pillow block at this end. I've made it with slots or notches so that it can be adjusted a little bit. And that's the Outfeed table extension. I put together a package of plans on the stand, the dust collector attachment, and this Outfeed table extension. So I have 8 drawings covering the stand, drawers, best use of a sheet of 4x4 MDF to make up the pieces, best use of a piece of 6 foot by 14 inch shelving material, casters, pedal, Outfeed table extension, and the dust collector connection. In addition to the 8 drawings, I have a set of instructions, 28 color pictures with descriptive text on 5 pages. And I put quite a bit of work into making up an accurate cut and materials list, which includes every piece of wood hardware used, a shopping list for materials, and a list of the tools that I used to make the stand and the attachments. So if you're interested in the plans, I hope you will be, please click on the link below. It takes you to my website, and you can order the plans for download there. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching. Thanks for sharing it with other folks that you think might be interested. Thanks for subscribing. Thank you.